We're WVIZ, and thanks to you, we're 25.
Boom, 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 apple pie, and Mama's cooking them truly American. Boom, 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 rich, poor, black, white, how you look, you can make it if American. Just do your stuff and do it well. Lots before us did it and we think they're swell. It's the spirit of America, the people that truly American. They're truly American.
Howdy, partner. Hey, ever been to a rodeo? It can be pretty exciting. You know, back in the days of the Old West, rodeos were nothing more than friendly little contests between cowpunchers. You see, the few days following the hard work of roundup time, that's when cattle were driven in from the range for branding and shipping, were always times for celebration. Having just been paid for their work, the ranch hands had money to wager on their respective skills, which included such things as, bronco riding, calf roping, and steer wrestling. Now, the modern rodeo came about when these roundup games were taken to public places like auditoriums and stadiums and combined with Wild West shows. Competing in rodeos used to be one of the favorite activities of one of America's most beloved characters, Will Rogers. Now, he was one of the wittiest and kindest men ever to twirl a rope, starting out as a working cowboy, traveling all over the world, and then becoming eventually one of the best known and most widely listened to men in the world. Now, there was nothing fancy about him. He dressed plainly and acted like anybody else. He simply spoke a lot of plain, down-to-earth horse sense, and all America loved him for it. His humor was often as wise as it was gentle and funny, and many of his comments of life in his time still make a lot of sense today. Will, the youngest of 5 children, was born in 1879 in a town called Ulaga, near Claremore, Oklahoma, which then was Indian Territory. Now, here are some slides of his birthplace. His father, known far and wide as Uncle Clem, was one of the most successful and influential men in the territory. Now, Will was about 1/4 Cherokee Indian, and through all his life he was intensely proud of his Indian heritage and never hesitated to talk about it. Will's mother, Mary, was in poor health after his birth, and much of his daily care was left to a black woman who worked for the Rogers family. This was Aunt Babe Walker, a kind, caring woman who spent lots of time reading the Bible and singing religious hymns. As Will grew older and spent more time outdoors, Aunt Babe's husband, Uncle Dan Walker, took charge of him. He was the one who first interested Will in roping and made him practice every day on an old elm stump in the backyard until every throw was perfect. As Will used to tell it,
"Why, I could rope turkeys at 4, and I caught them, too."
At school, where he talked more than studied, Will was nicknamed Rabbit because he had big ears and he was a fast runner.
Shucks, a person that gabbed as much as I did had to be fast.
Well, Will barely managed to make it through his first year, and finally in the spring when he came riding home on a sorrel mare, Dandy, he had improved his roping and riding, knew how to cure hiccups by swallowing oil of cloves, and knew that if a fox barked, he must bark back. But the report card he brought home showed he had learned little else. Now, the next fall, he was sent to a girls' seminary at Muskogee in eastern Oklahoma, along with 2 of his sisters, Maud and May. Well, he spent more time entertaining the girls than studying his books. And he was such a funny, homely little boy, with mischievous gray eyes and wild brown hair, that he had little trouble keeping the girls in giggling fits.
Why, I felt just like old Custer did when he was surrounded by all them Indians. Like I was an island completely hemmed in by petticoats.
You know, I bet if Will Rogers was attending school today, he wouldn't be getting away with too much of that funny stuff, huh? What do you think? Well, in the summer of 1893, Will accompanied his dad to Chicago with a trainload of cattle, riding all the way in a caboose. After the cattle were sold, they took in the Chicago World's Fair. Now, the most exciting part of the fair for Will was Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. And the high point of the Wild West show, as far as Will was concerned, was a fantastic roping routine performed by an hombre named Vicente Oropeza, one of the great ropers of that era. Well, Will never forgot his extraordinary performance, and it strongly influenced his own skillful rope handling in the years ahead. In the winter of 1898, Will quit school and went searching for adventure. Now, his first stop was at Higgins, Texas, where he punched cows and busted broncos for about 4 months. After that, he wrangled horses in Amarillo, Texas, roamed the state of California, and eventually returned to Claremore, where, at the age of 20, he took complete charge of the Rogers family ranch, which, incidentally, was named the Dog Iron Ranch. Well, on the 4th of July, 1899, Will entered a steer roping contest at Claremore and won first money.
It was the very first thing I ever did in the way of appearing before an audience in my life. And, well, as I look back on it, that had quite an influence on my little career. For I kind of got used to running to 'em, and the first thing I knew, I was just plumb ornery and fit for nothing but show business. And once you're a showman, you're plumb ruined for manual labor again.
Early in 1902, with $3,000 in his pockets from the sale of cattle, and lured by dreams of adventure and great wealth, Will shipped out on an old tramp steamer that took him to Argentina. Well, things didn't work out for Will in Argentina, and before long, all his money had run out. He was trying to figure a way to get back home when a funny thing happened.
You see, I had got this chance to ship out on this small, funny-looking kind of what you'd call modernistic Noah's Ark as chaperone to a bunch of mules and cows that was being transported to South Africa. I was broke and hungry, but Africa seemed pretty exciting, so I just flipped a coin to see whether to wire Pappy for some getting home money or to take the cow job. And the cows won.
In December of 1902, in Johannesburg, South Africa, Will joined Texas Jack's Wild West show as a trick roper and became an immediate hit.
We had the best show in South Africa, and only 8 Americans with it. It was partly a circus act, and then we played blood-curdling scenes of Western life in America showing Indians and robbers. I was an Indian, but I screamed so loud that I like to scared all the people out of the tent. And then we had riders of bucking broncos and fancy shooting and a little of everything. I was called a Cherokee Kid on the program and did all the roping. And I was billed as the champion lasso thrower of the world.
After Africa, Texas Jack's show toured Australia and New Zealand. And by that time, Will had saved enough money to book third-class passage home. Now, when he finally reached the shores of San Francisco, he had been gone nearly 3 years, had traveled over 50,000 miles, and was anxious to give Wild West show business a try in the good old USA. It was in a Wild West show at Madison Square Garden in New York City that Will got one of the most important breaks of his life. It happened when a big steer came charging out of the chute to be roped, but somehow jumped the barrier and started running wild among the spectators. Well, that's when Will went into action. And what he did was reported in the New York Times newspaper the next day.
The Indian Will Rogers ran up the 27th Street side of the hall and headed the steer off. As it passed the corridor again into view of the spectators, he roped the steer's horns. Alone and afoot, he was no match for the brute's strength, but he swerved it down the steps into the ring. Immediately, the ropes of a dozen cowpunchers fell over it from all sides, and it was brought down with a quick turn and led from the track.
News of the brave young Indian who had risked his life spread throughout the city. And with all the good publicity that followed, it wasn't long before the young hero was appearing at the Hammerstein Theater in New York, which was considered to be just about the greatest vaudeville theater anywhere at the time. And Will had quite an act in those days. He'd come out and shuffle on down to the center of the stage with a coiled rope in each hand as the orchestra played cowboy music.